Now in session, be seated, please.
Returning to 2013-983, Commonwealth v. Hernandez.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Have any of you seen, read, heard, or overheard anything at all about this case or Mr. Hernandez since I last inquired? There are no affirmative responses. Have any of you discussed the case, any aspect of the case, any issues that could be involved in the case, anything you think might be relevant to the case or Mr. Hernandez with anyone since I last inquired? There are no affirmative responses. And have any of you had any difficulty at all following my instructions not to talk about, look at, or do any research about this case or Mr. Hernandez? There are no affirmative responses. The witness may resume the stand.
Thank you, Your Honor. Captain Joseph Lorenzo, please.
You're still under oath.
Have a seat, sir. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Yesterday, I had asked you some questions about your walk when you arrived and parked, and then you walked, ultimately coming upon a body.
Yes, sir.
And you described the path that you took.
Yes.
When you were walking that path, did you observe anything that attracted your attention in terms of broken glass, pieces from a car, anything of that nature?
No, sir.
And in that general area, when you got down to the body, I think you described the area as an open area.
Yes.
In that vicinity, did you make any such observations?
No, sir.
Now, how long did you remain on the scene?
I was there from approximately 5:30 to 8:30 at night.
And during the course of that time, I think you indicated other law enforcement officers had responded.
Yes, sir.
And did you make general observations of the scene around the body?
Yes.
And just tell us, what did you notice anything else near the body?
Yes.
And what did you notice?
Well, there was a Red Sox baseball hat, 3 feet, approximately 4 feet from the victim's head. There was a cigar, or what might be referred to as a blunt, approximately a foot from his right hand. And there appeared to be what I gathered to be animal scat near the cigar. There was a white towel some distance from the victim's feet, and there were some spent shell casings around the body.
And when you just referred to scat, is that some form of animal droppings?
Yes.
going to show you what was previously marked as 3C and 3D and ask you if you recognize the scenes in in both these photos.
Yes.
And do they portray the location of those items that you just described?
Yes, they do.
Okay, and with regard to the hat, approximately how far was the hat above the head?
3 to 4 feet.
Okay, and this other item, what you referred to as a cigarette, or,
Yeah, it's a blunt. It was probably about 12 to 18 inches away from his hand.
okay, and when you say blunt, can you just describe for the jury, what is a blunt?
Well, in my experience, it would be a cigar wrapping, but inside the cigar wrapping would be marijuana.
Okay, and what you referred to, scat or animal droppings, where would that be?
6 to 8 inches from the blunt, maybe.
Okay, and with regard to, you indicated there was a towel
Yes.
in the vicinity, and how far from the body would you indicate that was?
That looks like it's about 20 feet.
And is there an orientation with regards to the tire tracks you earlier described yesterday?
The tire tracks are more, excuse me, closer to the body, approximately 15 feet from the body.
And is there anything about these, the location of these items that had changed from when you first observed them as to how they appear in these photographs?
No.
Sir, you indicated that you also saw some shell casings near the body.
Yes, sir.
If you just describe the area where you observed, made those observations.
There were 2 shell casings in a small ditch in the ground, just above the victim's head, and another loose one more to the left of his head, a few feet away.
One minute. So I'm going to show you 3 photographs. First one there. Do you recognize what's depicted in that scene?
Yes, sir.
And what do you recognize that to be?
It's the ground, it's the victim's upper torso, of course, a Red Sox hat to the left, in the ground above him where I can, or where I remember seeing the one of the shell casings.
Okay, and do you see it depicted there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next photograph, do you recognize that?
Yes, that's the ditch that was also above the victim's upper torso, where 2 shell casings were found.
And the third photograph, do you recognize that?
Yes, it shows the lower portion of the victim, well, the entire scene really, with the, in particular, the blunt and the animal droppings.
And does that,
It also shows the ditch above his head, where the closer to his left arm, where the 2 shell casings were.
does that also show the area where you saw the other shell?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Do all 3 photographs fairly and accurately portray the scene as you saw it?
Yes.
Back on June 17th?
Yes, sir.
For these, Your Honor?
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to publish these. I'm showing 39A on the overhead.
Yes.
Is that that first photograph I showed you?
Yes.
Now, you indicated that there was a shell casing that you could see when you were alongside the body. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, can you identify it here in this photograph for us?
Yeah, it's a little blurry, but it's right over here by, I think there was a twig or something there and also in this area.
Do you see a twig here, sir?
Yes.
Let me try and zoom that in for you and focus then. Does that help you?
Yes.
And approximately how far was that from the head?
A couple feet at best.
The next one, I'm putting on the overhead 39B. You recognize what's depicted in this photograph?
Yes, sir. That's the ditch where there was two shell casings located.
And can you just point where those shell casings are?
The one above is right there, and below it is right there, approximately 8 inches away.
And lastly, 39C.
Yes.
And does this, can you show us the area of where these shell casings are?
Yes. The shell casing that was by itself is somewhere in this area here.
Okay, let me just try and track here. If you would do that again.
Somewhere over here.
Okay, and is it because the distance makes it more difficult to see?
Yeah. Well, yes, it does a little bit.
Okay, and what about the other one?
The other two were in the ditch over here.
Over in here. Now, if I can approach the witness again. Sir, I'm just going to show you 39C again and ask you if you would mark the areas with a red pen where the locations where you observe those shell casings. Can you do it hard so that
Sure.
you can see?
Sorry about that.
No, I'd like to push it over here. So now putting 39C back on the board, and does that show your markings as to where those shell casings go?
Yes, sir.
Now, sir, you made other general observations of that area?
Yes.
And just describe the area near where the body was.
Well, there was plastic coming up from the ground under the victim's body in the dirt. There was actually plastic. There was a lot of plastic in that area. That industrial plastic or landscape plastic, I guess you'd call it, that was sticking up out of the dirt.
I'm sorry, when you say coming up out of the dirt, was it free or was it embedded or?
It was embedded.
Okay. And just describe that plastic?
It was the type of plastic you would see, I guess, wrapped around sheetrock if it was on a flatbed down the highway, or the type that's, construction plastic is the best I could describe it, or landscape plastic. It was a hard plastic that had been there for quite some time.
Did you see any of that plastic near the body of this man?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And what about in the surrounding area?
Yeah, there was a little bit sticking up in different areas around the whole crime scene.
Did you ever see any a plastic bag, something loose in the vicinity?
No.
And with regard to that area itself, just how would you describe that general area in terms of, are there any buildings or improvements in that area?
No, it's a reprocessing site, I guess, for gravel and dirt and different kinds of road material. So there's all different types of material there, and mounds of dirt and grass and ledge.
And at that time, in June of 2013, what was the
It was
best?
full. There was, the trees were, I don't think there's any trees there anymore, but there was a lot of trees in the area. There were mounds of dirt, lots of grass.
And any sources of lighting, like street lamps or anything in the area
No,
where the body was?
no.
Homes nearby?
No.
Okay. What was the nearest improvement or structure in that area?
Corliss Landing?
Now, are you familiar with Landry Avenue?
Yes.
And Landry Avenue, in relation to how you approach the body, where is Landry Avenue?
Landry Avenue would be further north from where I was.
And how may I approach? I'm going to show you a series of 5 photographs and ask you to recognize them.
Sure.
That is the first one.
Yes.
I'm sorry, let me just back up. I'm going to show you this one first. You recognize that?
Yes.
What do you recognize that to be?
It's part of the area of the crime scene and the tire tracks.
Okay, when you say the tire tracks, what about in the background? Do you see anything?
Yeah, I see the woods. I see grass or wetlands and then a mound of dirt,
Okay, and how high is that mound of dirt?
20-something feet up.
The next photograph?
Again, it shows the surface of the area, different types of surfaces, dirt, resurfaced tar, and then a little grassy area with a large set of trees.
This next photograph?
Same thing, dirt, ledge, tar, a mound of rocks. I think that's referred to a crusher, construction equipment, some mounds and some trees.
This next photograph?
Yeah, same thing, a wider angle that shows the surface, the different surface types, the mounds of dirt to the left, the mounds of dirt to the right. There's a large mound in the front. I see trees in the foreground, and it looks like a telephone pole about 200 yards in the distance.
And the last one?
A little closer now, we're getting to that telephone pole. I see more grass, mounds of dirt with longer grass and a lot of trees.
Did these photos fairly and accurately represent the scene as you saw it on June 17th?
Yes, sir.
None at all.
Okay.
Emma, se ve. I'm going to put these now on the overhead 48. You described that as a mound or a mound?
Yes.
Approximately how high?
20 to 25 feet. It goes higher and further on.
Can you see the tire tracks?
Yes, sir.
And where was the body in relation to this picture?
It's difficult to tell with this picture, but it was this side of the tire tracks.
And 40B on the overhead, in relation to that last photograph I showed you,
Yes.
is this to what side?
This would be the opposite side.
Okay. And what does this depict?
So the body would be, where I am right here, and it's taking it from that angle. That crusher that we saw, or that we're going to see is over here,
Okay, and over here you're indicating the side of the photograph.
left side of the photograph.
You know where, are you familiar with some of the businesses in the North Attleboro Industrial Park?
Yes.
Are you familiar with a business called Needle Tech?
Yes.
Do you know where Needle Tech is in relation to this photograph?
Yes, sir.
Okay, can you just tell us where?
It would be this way, so closer to the right side of the photograph and heading, I guess that would be east.
And you're indicating just, when you said, can you point again? Okay,
This way.
You're pointing this direction?
Yes, sir.
Approximately how far, now, in the photograph, there's something that is in between this location and Needle Tech.
This trees.
Okay, approximately what is the distance to Needle Tech from this location?
I'd guess at 100 yards, 150 yards maybe.
I'm going to show you now 40C. You recognize that as a picture from the scene.
Yes.
Now, you indicated there was a crusher on the scene.
Right.
Is that shown here?
Yes, sir. That's the red object.
And what about around the surrounding area? Just describe what else is there.
Again, you can see some of that, some of the tar and some grass, some overgrowth, the hard surfaces, some of the soft surfaces in the sand, and a lot of grass.
And now looking, 40D's now on the overhead. You recognize that scene?
Yes.
And what is that perspective?
Again, we're looking towards Landry Ave. If you were looking for the body was in the general vicinity of that small mound there.
Okay, the small mound you're indicating over here?
Yes, to the left. And again, you see the mounds of dirt, the mounds in the distance, a mound over here where the crusher is. Needle Tech would be to the right.
I'm sorry.
Needle Tech would be to the right of this photograph.
And how far from where you saw the body would Landry Avenue be?
That's got to be about 150 to 175 yards.
Okay, and can you see any, a telephone pole in the distance?
Yes, yes, sir.
And is that near Landry Avenue or on Landry Avenue?
That's probably right on Landry Avenue, yes.
And I'm putting on now 40E. Does that show a closer view there?
Yes.
And do you know where the roadway is in relation to where this photograph, or how this photograph is taken?
It's hard to tell if the, excuse me, if the roadway is on the other side of the trees or on our side of the trees with that photograph. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. Now, you've traveled Landry Avenue?
Yes, I have.
How many times?
Thousands.
Okay. You're familiar with an area on Landry that abuts this particular area?
Yes.
And I'm just going to put Exhibit 9A back on the overhead. Now, focusing in on the far part of, can you see Landry Avenue from this angle?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just if you would point to it.
Landry Avenue runs east to west.
You're indicating that little stretch of road there.
Yes.
Now, is there a place to pull off, or have you ever pulled off in an area over there?
Yes.
Is that shown?
Yeah, it's this little dirt area right in here.
Okay, and you're indicating this little area here?
Yeah, we have officers tend to pull over there a lot to run radar.
Okay. And is there any access point for vehicles on that side?
No, sir. It's wired off.
And just with regard to now the location of the body and its orientation to Landry Avenue, can you point to the approximate location of the body?
Yes, I can, because I see that small mound of dirt. The body was approximately over here, right around here, in this area, almost where they're digging here.
Okay, right in this area?
Yes,
here?
sir.
Okay. And is there anything that obstructed your view from where the body was to Landry Avenue?
Well, yeah, the topography of the land is such that there's mounds of debris, dirt, grass. You can see the hills here and here and here, and there's one here. There's some more over here. There's also vegetation and trees, so it would be very difficult to see Landry Ave.
Okay. Were you able to see over to Landry Avenue when you were at the scene of the body?
No.
Sir, first of all, are you familiar with 22 Ronald C. Meyer?
I am.
You've been at that location?
I have.
I'm just going to show you this photograph, ask you if you recognize the scene depicted in this photograph.
Yes.
Okay. Is that an aerial photo?
Yes, it is.
And does it fairly accurately portray the area near the scene and then adjoining businesses and neighborhoods?
Yes.
Rounded off, this is the next exhibit.
Okay.
Like this next exhibit?
Present this on the open, if you want. This hanging on exhibit 41 on the overhead. Now, just to orient this, see this area where I'm pointing to here?
Yes.
What is that?
That's the crime scene?
And you indicated that you became involved in this matter after responding from North Attleboro High School. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is that shown over here?
Yes.
And the roadway that you first took was Landry Avenue?
Yes.
Is there a road that you passed on your way from Landry Avenue down to where you took the turn onto John Beach Boulevard?
Yes, sir. It's this street right here, which is Homewood Lane, I think.
Okay, you're indicating this street?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you travel up Homeward Street or Homeward Lane, is there any other streets that run off of that?
Yeah, there's quite a few.
Okay. What's the first strike that, the first, where I'm pointing? Do you see, is there a street here that intersects with Homeward?
That would be Ronald C. Meyer right there.
Okay. And you indicate you're familiar with 22 Ronald C. Meyer. Do you see that depicted in this photograph?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And do you recall how many, on what side of the street it's on?
If you're coming from this street and heading in this direction, it would be on your left. I believe it's the second house on the left.
Okay. And if you just point to that, you're pointing to this home here.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And whose home was that?
Aaron Hernandez's home.
And what is the distance, approximately, from where we've been talking about back here where you found his body to 22 Ronald C. Meyer?
Driving distance is approximately a mile and a mile point two, somewhere around there.
Okay. And what about, as the crow flies over, if you were walking it and able to cut through
Yeah,
areas?
that's a half a mile or less.
Now, sir, when you first arrived, at what time do you believe you arrived?
Approximately 5:30, right around there.
And sometime, just if you would describe the weather at that time.
It was nice out. It was sunny and warm.
How long did you remain on the scene?
3 hours.
Approximately, or sometime after your arrival, did you notice any change in the weather?
Absolutely, yes. The weather changed dramatically.
Okay, and when you say it changed dramatically, just explain what you mean.
The temperature dropped about 20 degrees. The wind gusts picked up to the point where the tops of the trees were actually blowing, and dark clouds were rolling in, and we were getting warnings of thunderstorms in the north.
And you, at that time, had been present on the scene with some number of officers.
Yes.
And upon making these observations, did you take any action?
Yes, we did take action, yes.
Okay, what did you do?
Well, we made a decision that it was best to preserve the evidence that was on the ground as best as possible. It was quite evident that we were going to get a rainstorm and a heavy one. The winds were picking up, and we were moving rather quickly to try to preserve this scene and the integrity of the scene.
Okay. So what action did you take?
We ended up, I think I spoke to, I believe it was Captain Jack White from the fire department was able to secure some tops for us and some canopies, I think they're called, or tents. And we were able to secure those for the scene to put over the body of Odin Lloyd and over some of the evidence.
Okay. And what areas were covered or in terms of protected?
Officers covered the tire tracks, or a portion of them, the body of Odin. We also put a tarp over the body of Odin Lloyd, and we covered some footprints also that were found at the lower portion of Odin Lloyd, probably about, I don't know, 5-10 feet away from him.
Okay. And just describe the manner in which they were covered.
The tire tracks were covered with a larger tarp, and there were rocks put around it. The same thing for the decedent. We covered it with a larger top, and I think we might have put rocks around that too, because the wind was blowing pretty heavy. And we put the canopy over the body of the decedent. The footprints, I think one set of footprints, we just used the, these tents come in the carrying case. I think they come with whatever it is, and that was used as one, and a smaller top was used for the other set of footprints.
Okay. And just tell us what happened as you were engaged in, with regard to the weather. How did the weather, or what was the weather doing while you were making efforts to cover certain items or locations at the scene?
Well, as I said, it was changing dramatically. It went from this 83 sunny day to about 60 degrees and very windy. Black clouds were coming in very fast over the trees. The wind was picking up, the trees were bending, and it began to rain rather heavily for some time. Okay. Wind-driven rain.
So prior to the rain arriving, what items were actually collected?
Yeah, we made a determination to collect the shell casings. The 5 shell casings altogether were located at the scene. We made a determination to collect the baseball cap, the towel, and also the blunt.
Okay. And the reasoning for collecting those items?
To secure them, to preserve them, make sure that in case there was any DNA trace evidence or anything that we didn't want them. First of all, we didn't want them blowing away, and secondly, we certainly didn't want them getting wet.
Okay. May I approach you on it? I'm going to show you 3 photographs. First one, do you recognize that?
Yes.
What do you recognize that to be?
That's at the beginning of the storm coming in, black clouds.
Second photograph?
That's showing areas that we covered.
And third photograph?
Again, that's showing mainly the body of the decedent and how it was covered.
Okay. Did they fairly accurately portray what you saw at the scene on June 17, 2013?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, cut off.
Okay.
Marcus, next exhibit.
Yeah, I used the overhead to publish these. I'm now placing 42A on the overhead. You see that?
Yes.
And what does this depict?
That depicts the black clouds coming in overhead.
You indicate there was a change in the wind as well?
Yes, we had received some wind gusts, and the wind was strong. I think we got them up to about 30 miles an hour that night.
And in terms of the temperature, you indicate that dropped?
It did. It dropped about 20 degrees.
now placing 42B on the overhead. Do you recognize what that is?
Yeah, that's the covered, the first tarp you see with the rocks on it, that would be where the tire tracks were. So we covered those. This is after the rainstorm, I can tell because you can see the ground is a little wet. In the distance, you can see the canopy and the coverage of the body of Odin Lloyd. And to the right, you see some smaller tarps. And I know one of them is not a tarp, it's just that cover I was talking about, but those are both to the right.
And how much time did you have when you first noticed that the weather was beginning to change to set up these things or cover these items?
Well, we set it up fairly quickly. It was just that we didn't have it on scene with us, so we had to move rapidly to get those items, and the fire department was able to help us out with that. So I think it started changing. We could see the changes taking place somewhere around 6:20, 6:25. And
when did the rain actually come?
if I believe it was just before 7, 6:50 or so.
During the time, in terms of the, who brings these tarps and tents to the scene?
Well, to the scene itself, it was definitely the police officers that assisted in carrying them. I'm not sure if the firefighters brought them down below to where the Collis Landing entrance was, and we carried them from there. We also had our pickup truck bring some items, a couple generators with lights on them, stuff like that. So I'm not sure if the pickup truck went to the fire department to get them, or if the fire department directly delivered them to there. Yeah.
Well, with regard to any vehicles, earlier you described there was a line, a perimeter line, is that right?
Yeah, no one went past that.
Okay, who was manning that line?
Officer Zimmer.
Okay, and so no vehicles crossed that, came closer to the scene?
No,
Okay. And so how were these items transported?
we carried them.
And when you say we, was that police officers, firefighters?
Just police officers.
Did any other firefighters come to the scene?
No, I don't believe so, no.
Now, in this photograph, does it depict what, whether these photos were taken before or after the rain?
That's after the rain, you can tell.
Okay. And that rain, how long did it last?
It was 45 minutes to an hour anyway.
Okay, and just describe the amount of rain that came down.
We had we had another similar canopy to the one that's over Odin Lloyd, just to the left of that canopy.
Object to the non-responsiveness, Your Honor. It's a question about how much it rained, I think.
How much did it rain?
It rained so much that we had to keep pushing the top of the canopy up to get rid of the water.
Okay. Was it, in terms of the topography at the scene here, did you observe which way water, once hitting the ground, was moving?
Yes, it was moving downward. As you walk from Collis Landing to the scene, it's slightly uphill, which again was a little bit worrisome because all the water was traveling down these mounds of dirt and down the driveway area.
Okay, when you're saying down, with regard to the topography of the land in this photograph, 42B, just describe that. Is it level? Is it one side higher than the other? Which way was the rain or water moving?
The rain or water was moving from, I would say, from north of where we were towards the evidence. So it was coming down from these naturally, comes down from the hills, the mud and everything coming down. So the water's traveling that distance also.
And you're indicating coming from the left side of this photograph towards this direction?
Yes, sir.
And just describe the area you've indicated when you went over to the body, the area around the body. Describe that surface area.
Around the body was, I would guess the best way to describe it is ledge. It's very hard, compact rock and ledgy, and made no impressions whatsoever.
When it was raining, could you see whether that was porous, whether that was absorbing the water?
I don't know.
And prior to it raining, when you walked, were you able to determine whether you were making any markings in that area?
Yeah, there was no markings in that area.
Now I'm going to put on 42C. You recognize that?
Yes.
And what does that show?
That shows the top that's covering Odin Lloyd and the canopy that we put over.
You indicated that there was, excuse me, a couple of other coverings for down here to cover some areas of what appeared to be footwear.
Yes.
And just what were those covers?
Again,
Where did they come from?
Same, I believe they were delivered by the fire department. Again, there's a smaller top to the right, and to the left side of the picture is, what that is, the last thing we had is the cover that the top would come in, or the cover that the canopy came in. We use that as a piece of material to cover the footprints.
You indicated it rained for some period of time. What happened, approximately what time did it end?
It was just before 8 o'clock. I'm sorry, just before, yeah, it's just before 8 o'clock.
And describe the weather conditions after the rain ended.
The sun came out. Actually, there was a double rainbow that appeared in the sky, and the weather got nice very quickly.
And approximately what time is when this double rainbow came out?
It was close to 8 o'clock.
And so the lighting at that time was what?
It was still fairly light out. In fact, the sun popped out a couple times. So.
And so how much, at that time of year, how much daylight did you still have?
Yeah, it stayed light fairly late. I think when I left around 8:30, it was still, although darkness was coming in, it was still fairly light out.
Okay. And now, prior to it getting dark, were some efforts made now, further efforts made at the scene regarding these items that you had covered up?
Yes, they uncovered the items to take some photographs and video.
Now, in the interim, during the course of the rainstorm, did other individuals come to the scene?
Yes.
And who else came?
A number of the troopers assigned to the district attorney's office, a member of the district attorney's office, Pat Bomberg, chief of police.
Okay. And with regards to when you referred to crime scene, did you see what they began to do?
Yes, they first took photographs, which I believe you just saw, of everything that was covered. And at some point, they took a video from the very beginning of John Deach, where Corliss Landing is, and then walked towards the scene as if you were walking towards the scene. And then they took photographs of everything uncovered.
Okay. And during the time that you were there, from the moment you had arrived along the body, did you see any other individuals going towards the body prior to the covers being placed on it?
Yes.
Okay, and who were those people?
The closest was probably Officer John Grimm and Detective Origi.
Okay. Did they have particular responsibilities when they arrived at the scene?
They did.
And did you see anyone taking any photographs?
Yes.
And who was that?
Detective Origi.
And when he was taking the photographs, just describe the area that he was photographing.
He photographed the tire tracks and leading up to the body. He photographed the body. He photographed the blunt and the animal droppings. He photographed the rounds.
And when he was doing this, how close was he, or what areas was he moving in
Well,
relation?
he was circling. He wasn't walking through it, but he was circling the area, trying to get the best view of all the evidence.
And as he was circling around the body, taking those photographs, did you observe whether he was leaving any footprints in that area?
I imagine he did. Around the body, it would be nearly impossible to leave any footprints. It was very hard, but I'm sure there were certain areas that he walked on where there might have been footprints.
Okay. In those areas, did you notice there was a change in the surface area, the ground, away from the body?
Yes.
And where was that?
Down below, where you saw that we had the two smaller covers, was a soft sandy area, and even further down by the resurfaced tar area where the tire tracks were, that was a little softer. But up by the body, it got very hard.
Okay. Did you see much vegetation growing near the body?
Not near the body, no.
Okay. And what about in the lower areas that you described near the tire tracks and where those items, those areas?
Yeah, there was grass growing in those areas.
Okay. And when you were observing Detective Origi doing that, what if anything, did you see Officer John Grimm doing?
Well, Detective Origi was photographing and sort of calling off what he was photographing, and Officer Grimm was marking down on a piece of paper. He actually had a clipboard and writing what Detective Origi was doing and also what he observed, and I think he even was drawing a little sketch.
Did you see him accompanying, or at least in some proximity to Detective Origi as they were moving around?
Yeah, they were close proximity to each other.
And how late did you remain on the scene?
I stayed till 8:30.
And at some point, while you were there, do you know whether any of the tarps were ever taken off any of these areas?
Yeah, they were. Yes, they were.
And who took them off?
I'm not sure.
If I could approach you on. Just want to show you. First photograph, you recognize it?
Yeah, that's the rainbow that appeared. Yes.
Next photograph?
That's the area of the tire tracks when the tarp was taking off.
And this third one?
Yes, that's an area of the tire tracks that are still covered, and then the where the body of Odin Lloyd is and the tarp was taken off.
And that's that. Did they fairly accurately portray the scene?
Yes.
That's what we want for the next three.
Okay.
The next exhibit.
Maybe mark- Without objection, they may be marked as the next exhibit.
And publish these, Your Honor.
Right.
So I'm showing you this, what's now 43A, do you recognize that?
Yes.
What is that?
That's the picture of the double rainbow that appeared.
And as a result of the storm ending, did the skies lighten somewhat?
Yes, they did.
I'm showing you 43B, recognize that.
That's the picture of the tire tracks after the tarps were taking off. I believe there's a tag there, number 1.
And 43C, you recognize that.
Yes, that's a picture of the tarp still on the tire tracks, and in the distance you can see the body of Odin, who's been uncovered, and the tent has been taken down.
Now, after the storm had ended and these items were being recovered, did you see, was anything done with regards to the body of Odin?
Yes.
And what was that?
I have been, Your Honor, unless he has personal knowledge of this.
Did you observe this?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
The question was, did you see?
Yes.
Did you see it?
Yes, I did.
Okay, just tell us, what did you see?
One of the state troopers assigned to the case searched the body of Odin Lloyd.
Okay.
Including
And
the-
when you say searched it, first of all, you made observations of his clothing when you were alongside of him?
Yes.
And just tell us about the condition of his pockets when you first came to his side.
Nothing unique about his pockets. They were normal, intact.
And just in terms of the lining of the pocket, do you know whether was any part of that shown?
No.
And when you say there was a search of the body, just describe I think you said Trooper Shervin,
I believe it was Trooper Shervin, yes.
and just describe what you observed.
Trooper Shervin was over the body of Odin Lloyd, and he would go through the pocket and announce what he was doing to the other troopers and officers that were there so they could mark it down. He went through one pocket, emptied it, inventoried what was there, went through the other pocket, emptied it, inventoried what was there, and announced it.
Okay. And were certain items then taken out that you observed?
Yes.
And just describe those items.
There was a wallet with identification. There was, I believe, some loose change and some money. I'm not sure how much, around $60-something, I believe, 64. That was not in the wallet, I don't think. And there was 2 sets of keys.
And while these items were being, excuse me one second. Back up that drawing. Now, sir, I'm going to show you, this photograph has previously been marked 24A. Do you recognize that?
Yes, sir.
And what is that?
That's a wallet.
And when did you see that wallet?
As soon as they took it out of his pocket.
Okay, in the pocket. Whose pocket?
Odin Lloyd's.
I'm going to show you photograph marked 24C. Do you recognize that?
Cell phone?
Okay, and have you seen that before?
I did.
And where did you see it?
That was also taken out of his pocket.
In whose pocket?
Odin Lloyd's.
24D?
Backside of the cell phone, I believe.
Okay.
Taken out of his pocket. Odin Lloyd's pocket.
Okay. 24E?
I believe that's 1 set of keys.
Okay, and you've seen those before?
Yes, that they were also taken out of Odin Lloyd's pocket.
And you also indicated there were 2 other items. I'm going to show you this next photograph. Do you recognize it?
Yes.
What do you recognize that to be?
It looks like a bottle cap and another set of keys.
Okay. And do you recognize the keys?
Yes, I do.
And where did you see those?
They were taken out of Odin Lloyd's pocket.
And this, is it, when the keys were taken out, was it placed on something?
Yeah, there was a bag that they put everything on, black bag.
And last time I'm going to show you this photograph. Do you recognize it?
Yes, that's the cash that was taken out of his pocket, Odin Lloyd's pocket.
Okay. And these last 2, do they fairly accurately depict what you observed coming out of the pockets of Odin Lloyd?
Yes, sir.
And obviously these other items similarly came out of his pockets.
Yes, sir.
John, I'd ask if the next, these last 2 be marked.
Okay.
I'm placing 44A now on the overhead. Does that depict the keys that you observed coming from the pocket of Odin Lloyd?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm placing 44A on the screen. And you recognize that?
Yes, sir.
And that is one of the photos I just showed you?
Yes.
And this photograph, if you could just describe what does it depict?
Depicts a set of keys and I believe, a bottle cap.
Just describe the set of keys, if you would.
It looks like there's a key with a key ring, an alarm or door opener on the side of it, and a tag that's attached to it.
Now I'm going to place 44B on the overhead. Recognize that as one of the photos I just showed you.
Yes.
And what does this depict?
Cash and change.
And you indicated where did this cash and change come from?
It was in one of his pockets. I'm not sure which pocket they took it out of. Odin Lloyd's pocket.
Now, sir, you indicated, you were off duty at the time you first received this call,
Yes.
and as a result of that, you responded.
Yes.
Do you recall what type of footwear you had on when you responded?
Running shoes? Running sneakers?
Okay. And when you went down to the body, were you wearing those?
Yes.
At some point later, when the storm was either coming or after it came, did you change your footwear?
Yes, I put some boots on.
Okay, and how did you do that?
I just went to my cruiser and placed some boots on.
Okay. Now approach on. Let me show you two photographs. Ask you if you recognize what's depicted in this first one.
Yeah, those are my running sneakers.
Okay. Those are the shoes you were wearing when you went to the
Yes.
body of Odin Lloyd?
Yes.
And second photograph.
Those are the boots I put on.
And at what time, if you know, did you change?
I think it was approximately 6:30 or so when the weather started changing, so.
Today, fairly method would declare the condition of them at the time of that date.
Yes.
No, at all. These next exhibits.
No objection.
Next exhibits.
I can use the overhead now.
I'm placing 45A on the screen. Does that show your the soles of your sneakers?
Yes.
I'm putting 45B. Does that show the soles of your boots after you've changed into those?
Yes.
Sir, did you ever go to an area other than where you describe up near the head of Odin Lloyd or that surrounding area?
No, the closest, the furthest I went away was, well, not the furthest I went away, but the only other area I went to was further above his head into an area where we had set up a tent for ourselves.
And when you said there was a tent set up, where was that generally located?
I would say if you're looking at Odin Lloyd's body and you were looking from the feet up, it was probably about 30 feet away from his head, if not more.
And while you were there, did you see, outside of what you described as Officer Grimm and Detective O'Riggy, did you see anybody else prior to those areas being covered in the vicinity of where you described the surface being softer?
No, the only other person that got close to the body was paramedic Jack White.
Okay. And when you say you got close to the body, From what direction did they approach and where did they go?
He came in from the same way I did, so above the head and down to the right flank of the victim.
I could approach. Just going to show you a photograph. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
Okay, and what do you recognize it to be?
It's Interstate 95.
Okay, and is there an adjoining area that you recognize?
Well, yeah, it says exit 5 is right here.
Okay, and does that show any portion of John Deach Boulevard?
Yes, it does.
And does this fairly accurately portray that, essentially the layout of that area?
Yes.
Not right off, but this is the next exhibit.
Okay.
Like this next exhibit.
I could have a moment, Your Honor. Sorry, Your Honor, just looking at the pen here. I could approach you.
Me.
Sir, I'm just going to show you this item. And if you could, are you familiar with certain locations in the North Attleboro Industrial Park?
Yes.
Okay. And are you familiar with Triborough Gulf?
Yes.
And where is that?
It's at the beginning of John Deach, just as you come off Route 95.
Okay. And with this pen, if you could you just attempt to mark the area where you know Triborough Gulf to be?
I believe it's right here.
Okay, if you just make like an X, if you would.
Okay.
And if you do it hard enough, we could see that. Okay. Are you familiar with another business called Seacon Supply?
I am.
Okay, could you just also mark that if you would?
I believe it's over here. I'm not 100% sure.
Again, place an X.
Okay.
And you do it hard enough so we can see it. You're familiar with a business called Metalor?
Yes.
Okay, would you also mark that? And earlier you had described a business known as Needle Tech.
Correct.
Okay, would you also note that, please? And how about a business, Bell's Powder? Okay. And lastly, North Attleboro Electric, you indicated, does that show there? Thank you. I'm placing, it's now been marked 46. Does that show an area of North Attleboro Industrial Park?
Yes.
You indicated it shows Interstate 95 on that.
Yes, it does.
And if you could just give us an orientation, 95 runs in what direction?
North and south.
And what would be the north direction?
This way.
And that would be to your left?
Yes.
Well, and what direction would be to your right?
South.
You also indicated there was showed the particular exit 5.
Yes.
Just show us where that is, if you would.
It would be right here, to the right side of the paper.
Okay. This area you're in.
State of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This courtroom is now in session. Be seated, please.
Adjourned to 2013-983, Commonwealth v. Hernandez.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Have any of you seen, read, heard, or overheard anything at all?
Now, sir, at some point, did you clear the scene?
Yes.
And approximately what time was that?
It was around 8:30.
Did you remain involved in the investigation of this matter?
Not that night.
Okay. Later on, did you continue to be, excuse me, involved?
Yes, I did.
And at some point in time, did you go to Florida?
I did.
When you went to Florida, sir, let me first show you this photograph. I'm just going to show you this photograph, just have you focus on an article of clothing in the photograph.
Yes.
Do you remember having seen that, this photograph before?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Your Honor, could I have this marked at this time, just for identification purposes?
Marked identification.
Thank you. Thank you. And sir, when you went to Florida, can you tell us where you went?
I arrived in Miramar, Florida, I believe.
Okay, and at some point, did you go to a particular address?
Jasper Way.
Okay, and who lived at Jasper Way?
Angela Wallace, the mother of Ernest Wallace.
And as a result of you being in Florida, at some point, was there a search warrant of that home?
Yes.
And were you looking for a particular article of clothing?
Yes.
And what article of clothing were you looking for?
I was looking for the blue checkered shirt that you just showed me in that video.
Okay. Did you find it at that location?
No.
Did you also have contact with the sister of Ernest Wallace?
Yes.
And were there certain items that were then also examined?
Yes.
And were you able to find that article of clothing?
No.
And in the course of the search, was there a particular phone that you were looking for?
Yes,
And was that phone recovered?
it was not.
Okay. And sir, earlier when you had referenced at the scene, there was an individual by the name of Jack White.
Yes,
Do you know what his formal name is?
John White,
Okay, and does he, do you know where he works?
North Attleboro Fire Department.
Okay. If I could have one moment, Your Honor. And sir, a few minutes ago when I had you mark with the red pen that certain locations along John Deach Boulevard, if you were coming from 95, exiting it at exit 5, or let me ask you this, you're familiar with North Attleboro?
Yes,
And coming from 95, is that a route to get from 95, coming from the north, strike that, heading south, to get to 22 Ronald C. Meyer?
yes.
What route would you travel coming from 95, heading south, exiting at exit 5 to get to Ronald C. Meyer?
Exit 5, take a right off the exit, a right onto John Deach Boulevard, travel all the way through John Deach Boulevard, take a left on Landry Ave by the electric department, and then your next right will be Homewood Lane, and your next left is Ronald C. Meyer.
Okay. And from the time of exiting, approximately how far, what distance would you say from exit 5 to Ronald C. Meyer?
It's a little over a mile to the crime scene from 95, so probably, it's probably a little over 2 miles.
Okay. And in terms of the time, when you refer to the crime scene, is that Corliss Land where you found the body of Odin Lloyd?
Yes.
And leaving that location, traveling that by car, so on the roadway, approximately what distance is that?
Leaving the crime scene?
Yes, sir.
I think it's about a mile, maybe a little over.
Okay, and driving time would be approximately what?
2 minutes or less.
Thank you, sir. That's all I have.
Take a minute to gather some exhibits, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Counsel.
You're a captain in the North Attleboro Police Department, right?
Yes, sir.
And in the hierarchy of the police department, does that put you directly below the chief?
Yes.
Okay. And who is directly below you in the line of authority?
Lieutenants.
Okay. So you arrived at the scene, you said around 5:30 in the afternoon of June 17th, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you went up to the body and felt for a pulse.
Yes.
Okay. And you ended up staying there for about 3 hours, right?
Yes, sir.
And is it fair to say that while you were there, approximately 24 other law enforcement officers arrived between the time you got there at 5:30 and between the time you left at 8:30?
Yes.
Okay. And who was in charge at the scene?
At the scene, at one point, it was the district attorney's office. Mr. Pat Bomberg arrived and took charge of the scene.
So when, do you remember what time Mr. Bomberg arrived?
Fairly quickly, just after 6, I believe.
Okay. So from the time Mr. Bomberg arrived, was he making the calls as to what was going to happen at the scene with respect to the collection of evidence, the taking pictures of evidence, using tarps, that sort of thing?
I think it was a joint decision, and in these types of investigations, you know, you have the state police, the local police, the district attorney's office involved, and we work together in that. There's a number of officers there with a large amount of experience, as you can imagine, so I'm certain that he took part in those discussions.
All right, but someone had to make, for example, you said that at some point a decision was made to pick up pieces of evidence, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that was before anyone from state police crime scene services arrived, right?
Yes, yes.
And normally, evidence at a scene of a death, that evidence would be picked up, examined, documented by crime scene services, right?
Normally, yes.
All right. So someone made a decision on this occasion, we're not going to do it the normal way. We're going to pick up this evidence before crime scene services gets here, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Who made that decision, Captain Burns?
Well, we made it as a group. Ultimately, I allowed it to happen, and I was happy with that decision. But Detective Origi, who's got 30 years experience, along with Officer Grimm, who's got 20-something years experience, and myself, and we've been on the phone. The chief was on the phone with somebody from the state police. I was on the phone with someone from the state police. They were well aware of the storm that was coming in, and had a joint decision we got to get this evidence picked up.
Well, was this a decision made then by you, Grimm, and Origi?
It was a decision made by me, Grimm, Origi,
Who else?
certain members of the state police.
Who in the state police
Well,
participated?
the participation of the decision was made by myself, Chief Riley, Lieutenant Michael King, I believe, was on the phone with Chief Riley. Dan Origi was on the phone with somebody, I'm not sure who. I know I was on the phone with Sergeant Paul Baker, and everyone was aware of the storm that was coming in and what needed to be done. So.
Well, I understand a lot of conversations occurred, but someone had to make a call. Someone had to direct somebody, go pick up that evidence, right?
Well, I think ultimately it was our job, since we were at the scene, to determine that we needed to pick that evidence up.
Okay. And when you say our job, you were there, right?
Yes, sir.
And Detective Origi was there?
Yes.
And Officer Grimm was there?
Yes.
Okay. So ultimately, is it fair to say that the three of you decided we need to pick up this evidence because there's a storm coming in?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you say that you saw this evidence yourself. You saw it on the ground, right?
Most of it, yes.
Okay, so you saw several shell casings.
Yes, sir.
You saw a white towel.
Yes, sir.
You saw what I think you called a blunt.
Yes.
And you saw a baseball cap.
Yes.
That's some of the stuff you saw, right?
Right.
Okay. And I think you told us on direct examination, you estimated how far those various items were from the body, right?
I'm not sure that anyone did. I mean, with an actual tool, I don't think anyone measured it.
So nobody measured how far, for example, those shell casings were from the body before they were picked up. Is that correct?
I don't think so. It's not. I didn't see anyone do it, but I could be wrong. But I'm not sure anyone did.
And what about the towel? Did anyone measure the actual distance that towel was from the body before it was picked up?
Again, I'm not sure. I was on the phone a lot, but I don't think anyone had any material to measure with. So.
Out of all these officers who were at the scene of a death, nobody had a measuring tape? Is that what you're telling us, jury?
Those items were picked up, as you had said earlier, prior to that 24 so officers getting there. So out of the officers that were there at that scene with the storm moving in, I do not think anyone measured it with any equipment. Now, I could be wrong about that, but I don't think anyone did.
Well, to the best of your knowledge, nobody measured those distances, right?
That's correct.
Of any of those items of evidence, right?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay. And you told us on direct examination, it started raining, I think you said, just before 7 o'clock, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that was an hour and a half after you got there, right?
Yes.
Okay. And by the time it started raining at 7 o'clock, do you remember about how many law enforcement officers were at the scene?
Probably about 7, including us, the ones you just mentioned.
Well, there was a log kept by, you said that Officer Zimmer was manning the station or something, right? What was he doing?
We set up a perimeter. So anyone that would come through, he would keep a log of, yes.
So Officer Zimmer was posted up at the sort of the entrance to this area, right?
Yes, sir.
And he got there early, right?
Yeah, just after me, I think.
Okay. So he was there before 6 o'clock.
Yes,
It was still sunny and nice out when he got there.
I believe so.
Okay. And then his job was to keep track of everyone that went in or out of that scene, right?
Yes.
Okay. And to document it in a log, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you ever seen his log?
I've seen it once, I think, yes.
Okay. Well, do you remember exactly how many people were there before it started to rain at 7 o'clock?
It's got to be 7 to 10 anyway.
All right. Well, do you remember whether Officer McKean or McCune was there?
He was, but then he left to go to the witnesses, so.
All right, but he was there before 7 o'clock,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Okay. Officer Grimm was there, right?
Yes.
Okay. Officer Zimmer, we said, was there, right?
Yes.
Detective Arrighi was there, right, before it
Yes.
started to rain?
Yes.
Captain White of the fire department was there, right?
Yes.
Josh Langeal of the fire department was there, right?
Right.
Lieutenant DeMarco was there,
Yes.
right? Chief Riley was there before it started to rain, right?
Yes.
Detective Elliott was there before it started to rain, right?
Yes.
Detective Benson of the state police was there before it started to rain, right?
I believe it was, yes.
Assistant District Attorney Bomberg was there before it started to rain, right?
Yes.
Detective Sergeant Chicchio was there before it started to rain, right?
Yes.
Detective Sergeant Baker of the state police was there before it started to rain, right?
I'm not sure.
So I'm showing you a document. I asked you just to look at it yourself.
Yep.
Uh,
You were down here.
It's down here, and ask you if that refreshes your recollection that Detective Sergeant Baker of the state police arrived at the scene before it started to rain around 7 o'clock.
Well, I'm guessing this is an error, but it says 8:30, so,
All right?
which would be no.
Okay.
But that's.
You think that's an error?
I think it's an error because it also has him leaving at the exact same time, which means he came in and left, and we both know that's not true, so.
Okay, why don't we, well, this is on evidence, why don't we talk about what's in the document? Does that refresh your recollection about whether or not Baker got there before it started to rain?
I'm not sure he was, no. That's the one I wasn't.
What about Detective Sergeant Bennett? You recall he was there before it started to rain?
I am not sure about that either.
All right, so you're not sure about Baker and Bennett. So would you agree with me that Chicchio, Bomberg, Benson, Elliott, Riley, DeMarco, Langille, White, Origi, Zimmer, Grimm, McKean, and you? That's 13, right?
Right, and
Okay.
I thought you meant officers, so that would be 10, I was looking at 10 officers, and you included some firefighters and Patrick Bomberg, but yeah.
Because they all worked for law enforcement, right?
Well, the fire department doesn't know.
They weren't part of the investigation? Is that your testimony?
That's correct.
Okay. So you want us to, so we should exclude Captain White and firefighter Langille?
Well, just based on your question, yeah, you said officers, so.
Okay. And we should exclude Assistant District Attorney Bomberg because he wasn't an officer, right?
Well, I would never exclude Assistant District
All
Attorney
right.
Bomberg.
So that leaves 11 people who were at the scene before it started to rain, right?
Yes.
All right. And none of them had any equipment to measure the distances where these pieces of evidence were located before those pieces of evidence were scooped up, right?
I believe that the pieces of evidence that were taken obviously prior to the rain, but also prior to when a lot of those officers even arrived at the scene. So although there was, as you said, 10 or 11 officers that were there before the rain, there were not 10 or 11 officers there prior to us taking the shell casings and the blunt and the hat and the towel. So.
But you told us that the reason that you at the scene decided to pick up the evidence was because of the rain was coming, right?
Yes.
Okay. So before it started to rain, there was no reason to pick up the evidence, right?
Well, I think that trying to use common sense, we wouldn't want to wait till the rain started dropping before we picked it up. We'd want to make sure we did that ahead of time.
All right.
So.
Well, how soon or how close to the beginning of the rain, about what time did you pick up the evidence?
I think we picked it up, if I remember correctly, it was just prior to Eric Benson arriving. And he arrived around 6:20, I believe. I think we picked it up sometime around 6, in between 6 and the time that Trooper Benson arrived.
Okay. So between 45 minutes and an hour before the rain is when you picked it up, right? Well, you said it started to rain at 7, right?
6:50.
Oh, 6:50, I'm sorry, okay. And you picked up the evidence when, sir?
I'd say probably closer to 6 o'clock, or a little past 6.
Okay, so that's about 50 minutes before it started to rain, correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, one of the things you told us you did was you secured some tarps and some tents from the fire department?
Yes.
Okay. And those were used to cover some of the scene, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's because the rainstorm was coming in and you folks at the scene decided you wanted to protect the integrity of the crime scene, right?
Yes.
Okay. But you didn't, you chose to pick up those items of evidence rather than covering them with a tarp or a tent, right?
Yes.
So I'm showing you 42C. Figure out how to use this. Okay, does that, this is exhibit 42C. So does this depict where the tent and the tarps were set up by you folks at the scene that night?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And who decided to use these particular items to cover part of the scene?
I'm not sure. It's all we had, so I think we all just said, that's good, let's go with it, so.
So this again was a decision that you and Detective Arrighi and Officer Gray made pretty much?
Sure, yes.
And you got this stuff from the fire department, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And who decided where to put them?
The covering of the body and the covering of the tire tracks were done, and the footprints were done when there are a larger number of people there, including district attorney's office. So I think it was, again, a joint discussion about where exactly to put them and what we needed to cover.
So,
I couldn't pinpoint exactly who said, you know.
well, tell us when these items were erected, laid out.
I'm not sure.
What was it, closer to 6 o'clock or closer to 7 o'clock?
This was probably closer to 7 o'clock, sometime around maybe between 6:30 and 6:45, but again, I'm not 100% sure on the exact time.
All right, but this was a while after the other evidence had already been picked up, right?
A little bit away, yeah. Yes, sir.
And would you agree with me that most of this area remains uncovered or remained uncovered after you put up this tent and put down these parks?
Yes.
I mean, this covered only a very small part of that area, right?
When you say the area, you mean the entire crime scene area? Or?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, when Detective Arrighi got there, he took some photographs, right?
Yes.
Okay. And who directed him to do that?
He did it on his own, I'm sure. I mean, he probably had a discussion with me about it too, which is the one thing he should be doing since he's the first detective on scene.
What's the one thing he should be doing?
Photograph the area immediately.
Okay. So you're saying it's his job to take photographs,
Part of his job, yes.
and he took photographs?
Yes.
Okay. And did someone tell him what to photograph, or he figured that out for himself?
I think he figured that out for himself.
Okay. Now, you told us that it rained really hard, right?
Yes, sir.
And that it rained so hard that you had to, you said, push the water off the canopy or off the tarps or something?
Yeah, you know, when you're standing under one, you have to keep pushing it off so it doesn't collapse on you. So
Who was doing that?
we were under a different canopy, obviously, and there was just a bunch of officers under there that were trying to stay dry, and that we were all doing it.
So there was another canopy erected so that the officers on the scene could stay dry?
Yes.
Okay. So did someone decide that rather than use the canopies that you had to cover more of this area and protect it from the elements, that you were going to use it to protect the officers? Whose
Yes.
call was that?
There was no other areas that we needed to cover at that time, so it didn't matter.
Okay. And you said there were no other areas you needed to cover. That's because you had determined that there was no other evidence anywhere in that area after an exhaustive search. Is that your testimony, sir?
Well, no, not exactly. The area where Odin Lloyd's body was and the immediate surrounding area, we had a number of articles of evidence. Some had been picked up and preserved, and others we couldn't pick up yet because crime scene hadn't arrived, so we waited and we covered what we could.
And you say that there were some items of evidence that you couldn't pick up yet because crime scene hadn't arrived. How did you decide which ones you had to wait on and which ones you could just go ahead and scoop up?
Well, the reason why we wanted to pick up the shell casings, for example, is because of the topography of the land. We were afraid that the water was it was raining so hard that the water would come down and possibly, especially the two shell casings that were in the ditch, the water would fill the ditch. And ultimately, I think it did.
And it could move the shell casings, right?
It could move the shell casings. It could get the shell casings wet. More than likely would, even if we put a cover over it, because it was a sandy area. The body of Odin Lloyd, obviously, we couldn't move. The ME's office, would take direction over that. And then the footprints are footprints. I mean, you can't move them, so we had to cover those.
Is it your testimony that you covered every footprint in that area with a tarp?
No.
There were lots of footprints in that area, weren't there, sir?
There were, most of the officers wear the same type of boots, and there was only a small amount of officers that went down into the sandy area. I think I had testified that the area around Odin Lloyd's body was very hard, ledgy, and there really were no footprints there. Most of the footprints, if any, were near the tire tracks, which we covered, or near the lower portion where you saw the smaller tops, and we covered those as best we could.
You have training in footwear identification, sir?
I've taken courses in it, but hardly trained.
It's not your area of expertise, right?
I would say that's a correct
So
statement.
you're not telling us that by eyeballing all of the footprints in the area, you made some decision as to where these footprints, who would produce these footprints? Are you telling us that?
Well, I think that anyone can look at a footprint and say, you know, that's a sneaker or that's a boot, and that's easy enough to do, especially when you wear boots for a living. So
And there are a lot of different people in the world who wear sneakers, aren't there?
there are.
And there are a lot of different people in the world who wear boots, aren't there?
There are.
Your Honor, is this an appropriate time to take a break?
It's 11 o'clock. It's a minute before 11, we'll stop. Please keep in mind,